Hey there, folks. Welcome to the show. So I have an incredible guest today. Udo Erasmus is one of the most fascinating and spirited storytellers I've ever had on the show. He also happens to be incredibly brilliant. This guy is an absolute genius, and I had so much fun listening to him talk. And it's so nice when you have a guest on that is so engaging and just so full of life, to where basically I just got to sit back and listen, and I could not have more thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. So I'm going to give you a kind of a bio that I found that Udo did himself on his website that I thought just perfectly summed up who he is. And then you're going to hear some of this repeated in the interview, but it'll be better because it's from Udo himself and not me. But this is what it says on his website. Dear Seeker, thank you for visiting my site and wanting to learn more about me. I hope to one day learn more about you and support you on your path to perfect health. I was born during the Second World War in Europe, and sometimes you will hear me say that I was born in hell, and with a lot of help from visible and invisible friends, walked along crooked path from there to heaven. Along the way, I tried out many things and learned a lot. Every trade and job, every movement or breath, and every step led me to the next turn on the path to find new, different, and out-of-the-box possibilities. My path includes brief jobs in several different trades: fruit picking, dairy farming, logging, mining, carpentry, house painting, clearing land, burning brush, growing food, gardening, and finally, pesticide spraying. I spent a year in medical school and several years in science research. One winter, I had a part-time job babysitting pickled fish in a fish museum. One summer, I worked for the Fish and Game Branch. Several other summers, I worked on a drilling, blasting, and prospecting crew in the mountains of British Columbia. In the 60s, I tried psychedelics, couch surfed, traded a Winchester 30-30 for a trumpet, and I played after a few drinks of Southern comfort. Dabbled in flute and harmonica, sang in a choir, but more often in the shower, hitchhiked from Toronto to Vancouver without a penny to my name. Camped out, started a nude beach, and lived in co-ops, communes, apartments, and houses, both in rural and urban settings. It was wild, but it was fun. Yes, I even got married. A lover of biology and convinced that pregnancy is not a disease, I attended the home births of my 3 children and admit that my wife did all the work and that my small contribution was to catch them, tie and cut their cords, and return them to their rightful owner, their mom. After being poisoned by pesticides in 1980, I seriously turned my passion and attention to health. I obsessively studied scientific literature, created a method for making good oils with health in mind, developed the first ever flaxseed oil, authored several books on the effects of oils on health, fats and oils, fats that heal, fats that kill, choosing the right fats, omega-3 cuisine, and enthusiastically educated the public in about 40 countries on the effects of oils on health and disease. In 1992, I developed healthy whole food supplements for dogs, cats, and horses. In 1994, I developed an oil blend that is both better balanced and more effective than flax oil. I followed this with probiotics, blends, and digestive enzymes blends in 1997, and a year later developed prebiotic fiber and green blends. My Udo's Choice product line still sells all over the world. For 15 years, I spent 6 to 9 months a year living out of a suitcase to spread the message of good oils and health. I have passionately given 5,000 plus live presentations on nutrition and health, 3,000 plus media interviews, 1,500 staff trainings, and traveled to 30 plus countries with my message on oils, health, nature, and human nature. I have had the pleasure and honor to grace the stages with luminaries like Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopra, keynoted international conferences, and lectured in conferences on 5 continents. Now I am writing on many different titles and topics, including an autobiography. I consult, present, take on the key global issues of our time, and spearhead projects on peace, health, energy, environment, and education. My fervor and fire are now focused on sustainable energy and water management, as well as healthcare based in nature and human nature, the nature of human nature, and the thirst of the heart, resulting in perfect health for you, your family, and the world. Thank you again for being here. I look forward to taking this journey with you. That's just a small flavor of who Udo is, and it comes through in this conversation. This guy is unbelievable. He is one of the most fascinating, coolest, funniest, most spirited, most engaging, just awesome guests I've ever had the pleasure of interviewing. I know you will enjoy this conversation. Hey, and if you do like it, please consider clicking like and subscribe if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, or if you happen to go through one of the clips and you see this, or if you're listening on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a 5-star rating and share it with someone who you think it might benefit. So without further ado, here is Udo Erasmus. Thanks for listening.
Absolutely outstanding. Okay, Udo, please continue with the story. I'm going to give a full intro after in post-production, so please just continue.
Okay, so anyway, I was born during the Second World War. I'm 83, and I was born in 1942 in Poland, which was then part of Germany because Hitler and Stalin had made a pact. And Latvia went to the Soviet Union, and part of Poland went to Germany. My father had German background, but he lived in Latvia. Loved the Russians, hated communism because they took everything away from him. So he got given a farm in Poland, and the Polish farmer became his farmhand. There's a little tension there, you can imagine, right? What the hell is this foreigner is telling me how to run my farm? So my dad said, well, look, we live in crazy times. Let's just run the farm the way the farm needs to be run. And when the shit settles out, then we'll sort it out. So they became friends. I was born on this stolen farm. And when the war ended, I was 2.5. We were refugees. I was a war kid, then a refugee. We were on horse-drawn hay wagons on dirt roads with no military presence. The communists were chasing us in tanks and trucks. And the Allies, we like to think of ourselves as the good guys, because I'm one of those good guys now, right? They were shooting us from planes. They were using refugees as target practice. And these were all mothers with young children trying to get the hell out of being caught and ending up in Siberia. So then my mother had to leave. She had 6 kids with her. They were 6 years and under. She couldn't have, she decided that the roads were not safe because that's where their shelling was. So she decided to go through the snow-covered fields and had to leave 4 kids behind. I was one of the ones left behind. Imagine like that Sophie's Choice, to have to make that kind of a Sophie's Choice, right? And then her sister found out. She made it out. And her sister found out what happened, and she then found us and reunited us with the family. So I grew up very, very shy. I never felt safe. I remember feeling hungry. I remember not knowing what I could trust because everything was changing every day. So one day they tell you, go poo on the potty. The next day she tells me to fill my pants. And I'd just been toilet trained, right? And there was a lot of things like that because it was chaos, right? It was chaos, and you don't want to raise kids in a war zone, really, right? But they had a war zone, and that was the story. So we made it out to Germany, and I'm listening to shy kid, listening to adults argue, and they get really intense. And they argue about the stupidest thing, just like our politician, right? Right? Because they're not arguing about how can we make life better on the basic stuff, food, water, air, sleep, a little bit of comfort, warm in winter, cold in summer, cooler in summer, right? That's the stuff that we need help with. Instead, they're talking about stupid ideologies, and both sides are stupid. All ideologies are stupid because the only thing that actually works is love and help. Right? You're not saying
I could not agree more.
Yeah, cut to the chase there, right? And so I listening to this one more of these arguments, and they always made me uneasy because they were so intense, and I was 6 years old, right? And I thought, this thought came to me, man, there must be a way that people can live in harmony. And this little cocky voice of a 6-year-old who doesn't know how complicated everything is, I'm going to find out how. So that's been my driver all my life. because I was so bad that I'm always looking for how can we make it better. You look at 8 billion people living on the planet. They could all live incredibly beautiful lives if they were present in their own space, right? Because that's where the peace lives, and that's where the unconditional empowering love for your body lives. And if we then lived from that, because we would feel so cared for that, honestly, the only thing left to do in life was help, do what needs to be done. And maybe if you're going to be a dreamer, figure out what's the biggest splash for good you can make in the time that you have on Earth, right? So, and then I got into science because I was very insecure, and science is about predicting and controlling. So you make observations, you figure out how something works, and when you know how it works, then you know what you can depend on. And people weren't like that in those days.
Exactly.
No, and still people aren't like that. But so I was a born scientist, and I was always trying stuff and broke a lot of stuff because I was banging things together to find out which one was stronger, and stuff like a 6-year-old. When you don't know, right? That's how you learn. And then when it came to studying, I decided that of all the things on this planet that I had seen so far, life is the one that's most interesting. This is the planet that's got life on it. So I went into biology because I wanted to know what life is. And so I figured at some point in my study of biology, which means the study of life, we're going to end up with a beaker of something liquid and shining. And we'd point at it and say, well, there's life. But we never found that in biology. We studied form and function. You don't actually study biology in biology. You don't study life in biology. Then I went to psychology, study of soul. Said, well, that sounds like something interesting and mysterious, and I want to know what that is. Well, you don't study soul in psychology. You study thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. Then I went into medicine. They call it healthcare. I wanted to know what health is. See, I was looking for the good stuff, right? What's the key? What's the key really good stuff, right? Well, they only taught us about disease. So I went to the dean and said, what is health? He said, we don't know. We're working on it. What? Right? And so then we're told a doctor should always sound as though he knows what's going on even when he doesn't. And we call that lying on the farm. And so I left medicine, went back into biochemistry, genetics, because I was learning more in biology about health, because you study normal functioning of normal creatures in normal situations. And that's like, not sick, not sick, right? So I went back into that, and then eventually left because what I was looking for, which was really myself, but I didn't know that. I didn't find it at university. And so so I basically, what I'm looking for is not at university. Then I got into psychedelics, and I happened to have the good fortune of getting some Sandoz LSD, the good stuff, the clean stuff, no fentanyl in or whatever other crazy stuff people put in it. And I had an experience in which I was rolling on the floor laughing, and tears were running down my cheeks, listening to Mozart music. And the experience I had was like, oh my God, all of this stuff that I've been looking for in the world and being so serious to try and figure out is all already fully formed within me. And that kind of dropped the door off my war baby personality. It just basically melted the door. And he's like, oh my God, I have 1,000 options for how I want to live. So how do I want to live? And then I began to look at how do I want to live? Because before that, I was always just going with what, I had my own ideas, but I never saw the options. And then it took me about 15 years to figure that out. And then I stopped doing psychedelics because they can be pretty hard on you if you do a lot of them. I said, I'm not doing any psychedelics for 2 years. And so I said, okay, but I'm still looking, because I still haven't found what I'm looking for, right? So I'm still looking. And I decided that it'd be nice to maybe model myself after somebody who was a good model. Well, it wasn't my parents because they were like war shocked, and it wasn't my teachers, and I didn't have anybody around. So like the only one that occurred to me would be like a good model was Jesus. And I'm a kid. I'm like, what am I, 25 years old, right? And I'm 2,000 years too late to the party, right? And so I said, okay, so if I'm going to model myself after this guy, how do I do that? And I came up with the idea that I want to feel what he felt that made him live like he did, talk like he did, do what he did. I didn't want a religion named after me. I definitely didn't want to get nailed on a cross. But I wanted to know what was the feeling, because it seemed like some of the stuff he says is poetry. And poetry comes from feeling. So what did he feel that made that the expression? And so I put things to the test. I got the red letter edition, which is, do you know it?
Of course,
Yeah,
of course,
yeah.
of course.
So the New Testament, and it's a Bible, it's King James Version Bible, where everything Jesus says is printed in red ink, and everything else in that Bible is in black ink. So I'm trying to get like focus, right? You want to know what the guy said 2,000 years ago and how that relates to you now? Well, you want to get focused, and and I didn't care what Moses said. I wanted to know what my potential model said, right?
Right.
So I put things he said to the test, and we were always told not to do that. We were always told to accept the interpretation of the priest or the rabbi, or not the rabbi, the brother or the father, whatever you call these guys, right? That are trained in theology, but probably never had an experience of God for themselves. So they're just mouthing another ideology, right? So I didn't go there. I said, what does it mean to me? So then it says, okay, the first thing, kingdom of heaven is within you. Oh my God. God lives in heaven. Jesus lives in heaven. Holy Spirit lives in heaven. All the good stuff is in heaven. That's what I've been told. And that's inside of me. Oh, okay. And then it says, seek first the kingdom that's within you, and everything else will fall into place. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, right? And so, but then the question is, well, how do I do that? And so I was doing it by making these little tests, and I had magical experiences. And then I got in with the Christian group. And I thought, these guys are just like me, and they're trying to figure it out. We're all going to get together. We're all going to share our adventure stories of the search for the meaning of Jesus, right? Mm-hmm. And we're all going to leave enriched at the end of the evening. Because when you do experiments and have experiences, and you share those, other people get the benefit of your experiences. And I was so sure. They had a coffee house. They invited people. I walked in, sat down at a table. This guy, they called themselves the Jesus People's Army, by the way. And that should have been a warning to me, because army is not a good word in my war baby lexicon. So anyway, I missed the cue. I went in, sat down on a table, and this guy swooped in right next to me immediately. That should have been my second warning. Missed that one too. And I looked him in the eyes. I didn't introduce myself or anything. I just said, it must be possible to see God and live. Because there were stories in the Bible where people did. But we were always told, if you look at God, he kills you. You know, and my thing is like, I'm a kid, like, you know, it's like, well, let's see. He loves me unconditionally. He keeps me alive when I'm sleeping. You know, he made a whole world for me to live in. It provides everything, but I don't get to look at him. And if I do, then he kills me. It's like, no, there's something wrong with that picture. So I figured this would be the beginning of a beautiful, deep, meaningful conversation. But it wasn't. He jumped out of his chair, and he's bouncing around, jumping around in the room with his arms wildly flailing over his head, screaming at me, "You're from the devil. You're from the Antichrist. Get out." So I go slinking out. I'm standing on the sidewalk in the dark. And I was like, well, I haven't seen God. Maybe I asked the wrong question. Maybe I shouldn't be asking this question. And I got really confused and really desperate. And when you get really desperate, you become really sincere. And they are left with the feeling, it's like, I really want to know. I really want to know. I wasn't crying. I really want to know. And in those days, this is 1970, I used to go into nature whenever I got confused or things were too much was going on in the city, because, the pace is a lot quicker than nature. So I could go out in nature to clear my head. So off I went into nature to clear my head. And I ended up on this beach on the west coast of Vancouver Island. It's called Long Beach, but it's not the one in California. And I end up there, nobody on the beach, completely deserted. I'm all by myself, and me and the logs and the water, right? And the sand. And somebody had draped plastic over some logs and made a little dwelling. So it's okay, here's my hotel for the weekend. And I go in, crawl in. You couldn't walk in because you had to crawl in. And I fall asleep. And in the middle of the night, I woke bolt upright from dead asleep. And there was this being made of light. Couldn't tell if it was male or female. Couldn't tell if it was old or young. No label, no words. But this being made of light embodied a message. And I could put words to the message. That being didn't say it, but I could put words to it. And the words were, I am come not to judge, but to love. Oh my God. I am come not to judge, but to love. Is there a better summary of Jesus' message or the Master's message?
No. Perfect. Perfect.
And all my fear and all my confusion instantly evaporated. I have never had a question since that day what the message was. And that became my standard. How do I live to that standard? And of course, what you do, if you set a standard, if you want improved quality of life, you got to set a higher standard. So then what are you going to do? You're going to fail against the standard. And every time you fail, you can look at it and say, okay, where's the mistake? What did I learn? What do I need to learn here? And then you try again. And that way you then, with time, fail your way to success. Right? Now, we talk about health, it's exactly the same thing. If your body falls apart, you need to raise your standard. Right? Why is that? Because your body turns over 98% every year. If you drink the amount of water you're supposed to drink, you will have 10 to 15 times your body weight in water go through your body every year. 10 to 15 times.
Wow.
Right? Because it's always, you pour it in the top, you drain it out the bottom, and sweat it out through your skin, and you keep doing that. And so you're turning over the body. And 98% of the atoms in your body today will have been removed and replaced, and you won't have even noticed. And you still have the same crazy ideas you had today, so your whole structure is built out from under you without changing any of your mindsets. It's like, and if you raise your standard, that means that you can have rebuilt 98% of your body to a higher standard in 1 year. That's why healing is possible, because the body's always turning over. That's why we have to eat, because the body's always turning over. We have to replace what's being taken down, right? So, and so talking about standards, right? So then this experience started to become a memory, right? That's what happens. You have an experience, and then after a while, you only remember the experience. You're not having the experience. And I was really clear. I want to live in that experience. It's like, how do I do that? And that question took me to somebody who showed me a way to sit down, quiet myself, bring my focus into the space my body occupies. Remember, that's where the kingdom of heaven is. And hang out there and observe what's there. There's light there. There's sound there. There's love there, and then you get to know yourself, self-knowledge. How else would you get to know yourself unless you actually spent time with yourself focused on and observing what this is, right? So that's kind of like the story. And then I got married, and we my marriage broke up. We had 3 kids, and I got pretty upset. I'm a work in progress.
We all are. We all
Yeah.
are.
And I wanted to kill something, and I took a job as a pesticide sprayer. And then I got poisoned by pesticides after 3 years of being really careless. And then I went to the doctor and said, "What do you have for pesticide poisoning?" And she said, "Nothing." And at that point, the penny really dropped. My health is my responsibility. I knew it, but I didn't really know it. Now I really knew it.
Right.
And then I got into figuring out, how do I fix the problem I caused? Obviously, I stopped spraying pesticides. That's the obvious part. But then what is essential for health in the body? So I started looking at essential nutrients, 18 minerals, 13 vitamins, 9 essential amino acids from protein, 2 essential fatty acids from oils. And the part that was most confusing and most difficult and holds the most keys to good health is actually the area of essential fatty acids. They're the most sensitive of our nutrients, damaged by light, oxygen, heat. We should give them the most care. We give them the least care because we throw them in a frying pan and turn them into smoke. And when we do that, we increase inflammation and the risk of cancer. So I figured all that out. And then the year I got poisoned in 1981, it was established that omega-3s are also essential by the definition that you can't make them. You got to have them. You got to come in from outside. If you don't get enough, your health deteriorates. If you don't get enough long enough, you die. If you bring them back in adequate quantities before you die, all of the problems that come from not getting enough are reversed, because life knows how to make you a body that works, provided you take responsibility for making sure the essential building blocks land in your body so you can use them to do that, right? And so then I wrote a book, Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. And then we developed a method for making oils with health in mind. So I'm in a Canadian Health Food Association Hall of Fame for starting the industry of making oils with health in mind. And the first oil we made was flaxseed oil. Pretty much everybody knows that one now. That was my brainchild. And we did that because it has a lot of omega-3s in it, but it doesn't have enough omega-6. And I became omega-6 deficient on it. And so then we developed a blend that is better balanced, because you need omega-3 and omega-6. Both are essential in the right ratio, because they compete. And if you get too much of one, it will crowd out the other. Get too much of the other, crowd out the one. And they need to be made with health in mind, protected from light, oxygen, heat, and they should be organic, and they should be in glass, because plastic leaches into oils, and you don't want plastic in your body. I think there's a lot of stuff coming out now about microplastics. So we put that together, and that was in 1980. I got poisoned. 1986, flaxseed oil came out. And then I went on the road and 40 countries. I've given about 10,000 talks, media and talks and trainings in health. And then I worked with digestion, enzymes, and probiotics, because they get destroyed when foods are cooked and processed. And but they're super important for digestion, because if you cook your food, you give your body more than twice as much work to do than it was intended to handle, because nature's mandate was fresh, whole, raw, organic for all the creatures that eat foods, right? That's nature's standard for health. And then 60% of the raw food, if you chew it up properly, is digested by enzymes in that food itself. But when you cook it, you destroy them. So you should replace them. So then I got into that, and then I did work with greens, because greens are the foundation of everything. And then I started looking at what else affects health, and I said, oh my God, everything affects health. And that got me getting into total health based in nature and human nature, because health is the result of living in line with nature and your nature, and turning human nature into a teachable field, which we haven't done. Neither of those two, which are the two most important things in life, neither one of those two has actually been ever put together properly in 200,000 years that we've been here. And so I said, okay, it's me. This is mine. If you see, what do they say? If you see it, it's yours.
Yeah.
I saw it, it's mine. So that's what I'm working on now. And it's super fun to do that because honestly, if people knew those two things, total health, beast in nature, and human nature itself, and they were present to that and lived in line with that, this planet would be humming with love and peace.
It is. Well, first of all, that was amazing. I was in rapture just listening to the story. And there's so many things that you talked about that I want to bring back up. One is you touched on something that I deal with on a daily basis. I am a believer in Jesus Christ. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And so whenever, and knowing the word and understanding the divine nature that we as humans are, and that we are built not only in the image of God, but that we also have the kingdom of heaven within us. And to your point, Jesus said, I came so that they should have life abundantly. Everything you're saying just really resonates with me. And to the audience out there, I'm not trying to proselytize this audience at the moment. I'd love for you to follow Christ, but that's not what I'm trying to do in this moment. But everything you said is something that I try to meditate on every day. Is like, I pray, God, let your divinity, let my likeness to you come out every day. And I mean that in my behavior, how I treat people, how I love people, and also how I am with my health and my mind. And so to hear you articulate that so beautifully, and from the position that you came to it, is just as curious, and to choose Jesus and say, I want to follow whatever that guy's up to. You know, that to me is really remarkable. So I really, that was just to be quite honest, that was just beautiful to hear you describe that as such. And by the way, the fact that you're 83 is unbelievable. And I hope the people watching, folks, if you're listening to this on a podcast, you've got to go check out the YouTube, because you can just tell, I mean, 83, to say that you're sharp and nimble cognitively at 83 would be a gross understatement. But your looks match your mind, man. Something's working. So everyone, you should tune in. But take me back to this idea, because one of the things that you were a pioneer in, and I don't know, have you ever come across Michael Eads by chance? So so Michael Eads is a friend of mine, and he was one of the early, before Atkins popularized, high protein and high fat diets. Dr. Eads was doing a lot of this research. You're in that realm of these pioneers that started letting people know not only are fats healthy, but fats are absolutely necessary.
Well, some fats.
So exactly. And I want you to, one of the things whenever I was researching before you came on was, I don't think people fully understand omega-3s in particular. I think that because they make a lot of money, they're marketed on a massive scale. Talk a little bit about the differentiators, and let's talk about those essential fats. And by the way, one of my closest friends and business partners, Dr. Gus Vickery, he is right in sync with you on the essential fats. And we've actually created a formulation for a nutraceutical stack that includes essential fats. And so a lot of this that you're talking about, I understand a little bit because I'm in the business, but help this audience understand these essential fats and the differences and the dosages, and what to look out for also from the marketers that are out there.
Right. I'm going to write your marketing. I'm going to spell out your marketing plan now.
Okay. Love it. Love it.
Okay. So, I want to go back to that story that I told about the being. Okay. So when I was asking, who was this? Who was this being that appeared, right? Who was that? Well, like the options were, well, it was soul, or it was spirit, or it was life, or it was Christ, because I was on a kind of a trip of trying to understand that. And I realized they're all the same. So life in you. And then I started thinking, okay, well, life is solar energy. It's a fraction of solar energy, right? The sun shines 93 million miles, filtered solar energy. Then it filtered through the atmosphere. Then it goes into plants. It's stored in bonds between atoms and to make molecules because it excites electrons and they then bond and hold that energy. And then you eat it as food. And then in your cell, the bond gets broken and the energy is released. And now we call it life. So you are a solar energy gadget. So is every other human being and every plant and every animal and every microbe. Because the solar energy runs everything on the planet, right? So life is the master in your body. It's omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient in your body. Runs everything, weighs nothing, runs everything. It's the master in your body. The master in and of and for your body. And one of the synonyms of that master is Christ. But some other people call that same master Buddha. And the masters over the ages have all tried to focus on human nature to the extent they could, because 2,000 years ago, a lot of things we know now were not known. So they did the best they could to describe it, but they didn't quite get it to our scientific explanation standards because they lived in different times. But the truth of it is still the same. It's within you. It runs your show. What makes you alive is God, and it's divine, and life is God by one of the definitions, omni, 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 right? And in the health perspective, life is perfect health. Indestructible, never gets sick, never dies. So if you say, I have a flu, it's actually wrong. I have no flu, my body has a flu. Life is always healthy. It's perfect health. Cannot get sick, never dies. And that's your soul. So whether you call that your soul or your spirit or your life or your Christ or your master, it's all the same. Every human being has that same master running the show. Every creature living has that same master running the show. So you could say God runs everything, Christ runs everything, right? And you can say that what you consider spiritual is actually also biological. They're not distinct. They're not separate. The church is separated. The institutions have separated it. They've turned it into ideologies. The reality is they're not different. Okay? So now we're going to talk about health. Okay? The single most difficult area and confusing and misrepresented and messed up area is the area of oils. And in the whole arena of oils, there are only two things you have to have: omega-3 and omega-6, the essential so saturated fats and olive oil and monounsaturated fats. Your body can make all of that stuff out of sugar and starch, but it cannot make omega-3 and cannot make omega-6. In our food program, omega-6, we get a lot of omega-6, and 99% of the population doesn't get enough omega-3 for optimum health. So when I found that out, and then we started working with flax oil, because that's the richest source of omega-3s, I got so inspired. I said, oh my God, if we could make flax oil with health in mind and bring undamaged omega-3s back into the population, oh my God, we could help almost everybody. And I became, and there's something that feels really good in your heart when you help, just like there's something that feels really bad when you hurt people, right? We're built like that, right? And so it's like the idea that I could help so many people by doing a simple thing, but doing it with great care, because you have to be very, very precise with it because they're so sensitive to damage, right? Oh my God, And that's what drove the whole project. So and then here I've given 10,000 talks. That's like one talk every day for 34 years, including Saturdays and Sundays.
Okay, I got to ask you though, a lot of the people listening to this are going to hear that, and they're going to, you know how this works. They hear on a podcast someone with your brilliant mind talk about flaxseed oil, and they're going to run out and they're going to grab some flaxseed oil.
No,
but how do they? I got to imagine not all flaxseed oils are created equal.
Actually, flaxseed oil. I started with that, and I turned to a blend because flaxseed oil is poorly balanced. has a lot of omega-3,
Okay.
not enough omega-6. I became omega-6 deficient on it. So I got dry eyes, skipped heartbeats, arthritis-like pain in finger joints, and thin papery skin. And we fixed that by raising the omega-6 intake in this case. And that fixed it. And I said, you know what? I'm trying to help people get healthy. Can't do it with an oil that can actually hurt them. So then we developed a blend. Okay. But let me go into the omega-3 and 6. So
Okay.
the reason why they're important in every cell in your body, pretty much, omega-3s and 6s are converted into derivatives or essential fatty acid derivatives, omega-6 and omega-3. Some of them, they have fancy names: prostaglandins, prostacyclins, thromboxane, leukotrienes. Okay. And in your cells, those derivatives play important hormone-like regulatory functions in every cell in the body, 24/7, lifelong. So they're really important for every cell. And when you don't get them right, everything falls apart. They're in your membranes. They make hormones work more effectively at the cell receptor level. They're super important in brain development and brain function. Super important that women get enough omega-3s and 6s undamaged in the right ratio in their diet to build the kid's brain in their womb, right? Because if they don't get enough, the kid will take it out of their brain, because nature says, mom's the past, kid's the future. If we got to sacrifice the past to protect the future, we'll do that. And so then they've shown that every child gets less than the previous child. Every child depletes the mother further. And they think it's why women get more depression, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, collagen, inflammatory, and autoimmune disease than men do, because the depletion of essential fats during pregnancy sets them up in a way that men are not set up, because men never get pregnant, right? So then they say, really important that women have a reliable source of both essential fatty acids in their diet, both for their own health and the health of their kids. With athletes, if you get them right and you get the right amount, you can make your performance to exhaustion go up by 40 to 60% in 30 days.
Oh, wow.
We did that study with both strength and endurance athletes in Denmark way back. Didn't publish it as our study. I did it in a gym, and it was like, and then makes your skin nice, can increase IQ by 3 to 9 points. They transport minerals through your body. I told you they're part of membrane structure. They speed the membrane receptor function. They make every tissue more capable of doing its job, because they all have different jobs. And the omega-3s particularly are high energy. They're the highest energy molecule. Some people call it the God molecule, because it has so much energy. And, and then in nature, the omega-3s are at the poles where it's cold, because they keep you warm. They're actually warming oils, called warming oils. When you go to the tropics, you get less and less of it. And in the tropics, the saturated fats, they're cooling oils. And, again, the planet got created, so where you need the heat, you get warming oils, and where you need it cool, you get cooling oils, right? But the essential fatty acid, and now everybody lives in a sort of a temperate zone, because we're into air conditioning and all of that stuff. And so pretty much omega-3 and omega-6 required for optimum function, pretty much the same everywhere, unless you're just running around naked in the tropics or something, right?
Right.
So the amount, the ratio is important. Flax oil has 4 times more omega-3 than omega-6. That's too much. We use a ratio of 2 to 1, twice as much omega-3 as omega-6. And by the way, we're using the essential fatty acid form, not the essential fatty acid deficiency. So we're not doing fish oil and krill oil and that, but we're using flax and sunflower and sesame seeds to get the omega-3 and 6 in their plant-based, basic essential fatty acid form. And what the fish oils contain is not essential fatty acids, they're essential fatty acid derivatives. Your body can make those if you get the ratio right and you get you get the right amount. Okay? So how much do you need? We use The blend we use is about 50% omega-3, 25% omega-6, ballpark. So, it varies a little. The ratio is 2-to-1, more omega-3 because they're missing. But you want to get your omega-6s made with health in mind, because all of our seed oils are partially damaged by processing and then further damaged by frying. So you don't want to fry with oils. If you're going to fry, use the hardest fat you can find. That's not good. You're still going to get inflammation and more cancer, but they're less damaged than the liquid oils that are more chemically sensitive and are damaged quicker. Okay. So
So would that be real
Yeah.
quick? Would that be like an avocado oil or something like that? Would that be better to cook with as opposed to or would I ghee? I mean,
yeah, it
what
might
should
be
if I'm
more
going to
like
cook
ghee
with?
and coconut. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Avocado oil has no standards. The industry at least has some
Okay.
standards. They're bad standards, but the avocado oil has no standards. They probably take rotten avocados and suck oil out of the rotten avocados so they can make something sellable out of garbage. But there are no standard. There are no
Wow.
standards, so I don't recommend it. Eat the avocados. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, because if you get a rotten avocado, you won't eat it. Yeah.
Right.
So
Right. Now, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, and I don't want to take you sidetracked, but it's just practically speaking, olive oils. Now tell me, yes or no? I mean, you mentioned earlier our body can create the same fats from that
yeah,
we're getting from an
yeah.
olive oil, right? So
Let me give you the detail on it.
okay,
Okay. So
okay,
there are two issues. One is processing damage. That's an issue, and I'll get back into that in a
yep,
second. And the second one is essential fatty acid content. Those are the two issues, and then the ratio between. So those are the two issues.
okay,
Extra virgin olive oil, if they're not lying about it, because there's a lot, olive oils grow slowly. The demand picked up very rapidly. So people dilute olive oils with other oils. And that's a problem, right?
yep,
But if
yep.
it's really extra virgin olive oil, it isn't damaged by the processing because they don't use screw presses and then do the chemical feast that I'll get into in a second. So that's good. And that's why they're popular. They're also pretty stable, so you don't have to put them in the fridge. We keep our oils refrigerated because you want to lower the temperature because that slows down chemical reactions.
Okay.
But the oil itself has no omega-3s, like less than 1%, has only 10% omega-6, which is the other essential fatty acid, and 80% of what the oil contains you can make out of sugar and starch in your body. So it's, in that sense, it's a kind of a useless oil. And they didn't use it for frying. Traditionally, what they did is they cooked in water. When I was a kid, cooking meant in water. So the meaning of that word has changed. Now cooking means in oil most of the time.
Right.
Cooking in water,
Right.
they dumped the water and then they'd add olive oil for two things: flavor and the absorption of oil-soluble nutrients in your foods, because they're absorbed better
Okay.
when there's oil in the food.
Okay.
Was it the best oil from a health perspective? No, but it was the one that grew there, right? They didn't have the choices we have now because they couldn't ship oil from Saskatchewan to Florida, right? Now we
Right.
can do
Right.
that. And so it's highly overrated. And then you also can get damaged oils. And let me talk a little bit about the damage. So the industry that began maybe like 1850s and after that, and became really big in the early 1900s. And they used to have presses, but they were presses that were made out of wood that had a wedge in them, and they bang the wedge with a hammer, like a wooden mallet, and then oil would drip out of the seeds that were in the wedge. That's how they used to make oil. And then
Okay.
people started producing oil, and they would take oil around on a horse-drawn wagon. Every week you'd buy new oil because they didn't have refrigeration, and so the oil doesn't keep that long because they're pretty sensitive. And then the presses came in, and they called them cold pressed because that's how those oils were made in the wedges. cold pressed, but the truth is the presses are screw presses, and they produce an enormous amount of friction under the pressure that you need to crush the seeds and have the oil drip out. Okay, so they call it, but they wanted to call it cold pressed because they wanted to give the idea this oil is as good as your wedge pressed oil. And cold pressed never got defined. So anybody can call their oil cold pressed, and they just make up their own definition. And people will take oil that's been heated to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and they still call it cold pressed in the industry. So yeah. Wow. So anyway, so how I got into the oil area is I'm reading the research because I'm trained, so I know how to read the research. And I get a study. It says omega-6 is an essential fatty acid. And I told you what that means. Can't make it, gotta have it, gotta get it from outside. If you don't get enough long enough, you die. If you bring back enough before you die, everything that comes from not getting enough is reversed. And that applies to 42 nutrients. That's the 18 minerals, 13 vitamins, 9 essential amino acids, 2 essential fatty acids. That's what I mean. So omega-6 is an essential nutrient. I have to have it, and I have to get it from outside. And the very next study I read said omega-6 gives you cancer and kills you. And I'm going, huh? That's like God loves you and you look at him, he kills you, right? Like, how?
Right.
It's like, okay, I must be missing something. There must be something else here. I'm not assuming that everybody, they're lying. I'm assuming I'm missing something. And so that got me looking deeper, how oils are made. So the industry got really interested in shelf life. And this is shelf life for a product that by nature doesn't have a good shelf life. How do you give an oil a good shelf life, a long shelf life? Well, they found out that if you treat the oil with sodium hydroxide, which is, as Drano. You know what Drano is?
Yeah,
that's what
course.
you clean out your sink pipes when they clog. So sodium hydroxide, very corrosive base. Treat the oil with that. Then they treat it with phosphoric acid, which is used commercially to degrease windows. It's phosphoric acid, very corrosive acid. Then they bleach the oil with bleaching clays because the color molecules in oil absorb light, and light then does damage to the oil. You take those. And then when they've done that, the oil is rancid and smells bad. So then they have to heat the oil to frying temperature for about 30 minutes to evaporate, to blow off the rancid molecule. And then you have a colorless, odorless, tasteless oil. Then they put it in plastic bottles. Plastic swells when you put oil in it, and so plastic leaches into oil quicker than into water. And then they have pesticides in the oil because they're not starting with organically grown seeds. That's what you buy, and then you put it in the frying pan and do 5 times more damage to it than the industry did to it. Now, how much damage in the industry? I called them because I got poisoned by pesticides. I needed good answers, right? I called them. I said, so when you know this is damage to the oil, why do you do that? He said, well, one of the reasons we do it is we can get rid of half of the pesticides in the oil. And I'm going, boom, I've been poisoned by pesticides. I didn't know there were pesticides in oil at that point. So I said and I didn't say that to him. So I said, why didn't you start with organically grown seeds and you don't have a pesticide problem? And it was this long silence at the other end of the line. And I don't know how long it was. It might have been 3 seconds, but it might have been half an hour. It was really, but it seemed really long, right? He didn't know what to say. And then when he came back, he was mad. He says, what your problem is, the oil is only 1% damage, it's 99%. And if you get 99% on an exam, you'd be damn happy, wouldn't you? So he's like, he really into me. So now I'm backing off because I'm a shy guy, right? So, well, maybe I'm overreacting. It's only 1%. So we have a saying, when in doubt, do the math. So I said, okay, if I have a tablespoon of oil, which is like an edible quantity, right? Tablespoon of oil, and it's 1% damaged by the processing by the industry, how many damaged oil molecules are going to be in that tablespoon of oil? And I want you to guess, unless you already heard this before. Okay, so
No clue.
give me an estimate. And I know it's hard to do because you and the people who listen to you, we don't have a basis for doing the estimate because we don't know how big molecule. But give me an estimate.
Exactly.
Give me an estimate.
A
A
million.
million. Okay. So a million has 6
Yeah.
zeros, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the actual number, you want to know?
Absolutely.
60 quintillion. That's a
Oh, dear
6
heavens.
followed by 19 zeros. So your estimate is 13 zeros too low. 13 zeros. What is 13 zeros? 1,000, a million, a billion, a trillion. So your estimate is 60 trillion times lower than it actually is. And the reason why I say that is people use these oils every day, 2 to 4 tablespoons usually, right?
Sure.
And they're thinking, when I ask people that, I have never had anybody guess less than a billion times too low. Billion has nine zeros, right? Million, right? 1,000 million.
Wow.
And so people are doing something to themselves. And it's actually what they're doing to themselves is a billion or more times worse than they think it is. So then
Wow.
I say to them, listen, I was in Ireland. I said, so if you were at the airport and you had your boarding pass and you're about to get on the plane to fly somewhere, and somebody taps you on the shoulder and Mr. Truth Teller, person who only ever tells you the truth, he says, by the way, did you know that your chance of crashing and dying on your flight is 1 billion times higher than you thought it was? Would you get on the airplane? And I
Probably not.
told him I would canoe back to Canada from Ireland. And we laughed.
Yeah.
We laughed, of course. But that's the point. And that's why I say, is that cause for you to maybe rethink what you're doing? Because you're doing something to yourself that is 1 billion or more times, in your case, 60 trillion times worse than you think it is. Well, would you want to change a habit like that? And then you do this, and then you have to multiply that number by 5 when you fry the oil. And then you don't do 1 tablespoon, you do 2 to 4. And then you do that for 30 years. So you got to multiply that by 11,000. That's the number of days in 11 years, ballpark. In 30 years. And then you get cancer, and you say, I don't know, I always ate good because nobody ever told you. You never knew.
So what are you eating, Udo? What does it look like? How do you prepare your foods? What does it
Okay,
look
the
like?
best thing to do is always to look at how was it in nature before we got stupidly civilized because we thought we were smarter than nature, smarter than God, and smarter than anything. That's how stupid we are. Better living through all those crazy things has always had side effects, always had negative side effects. And and we keep doing it. And it's like one thing after another. Now it's AI, right? So the question is, what is nature's mandate for how we should eat? Well, before we got civilized, or nature, even though we're civilized, nature's mandate for every creature that eats is fresh, whole, raw, organic, local, mostly seasonal, although you can save nuts and seeds and potatoes for winter. And for human beings, probably more plant-based than animal-based, simply because when we had rocks to hunt with, which was not that long ago, we came home without meat most of the time. And when you have no meat, you have to eat vegetables because they don't run away and they don't fight back and they're easy to hunt down and kill, right? So fresh, whole, raw, organic, local, seasonal, mostly plant-based. The way I eat, and then you look at how are you eating? How far away from that are you? Fried takes you a long ways away. So I say to people, get your frying pan, the dumbest thing that was ever invented against health. Turn it upside down, whack yourself upside the head with it, throw that stupid thing out, go back to cooking in water, and go back, take a step from where you are in the direction of fresh, whole, raw, organic, local, blah, 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 right? And so what do I do? I am pretty close to that. Now, it wasn't always like that, but as I've gotten older and I pay attention to what my body tells me, certain things make me feel better than other things. I eat mostly raw, mostly plant-based. mostly organic. And it's, what is it? Seeds, nuts, fruit, veggies, and spices. Spices are the fire extinguishers for inflammation and for degenerative diseases. And in those spices,
Okay.
turmeric is the best known in the world. Curry is turmeric with some things that make it work even better. Cloves,
Yeah.
highly underused, super useful. Garlic, amla, which is Indian gooseberry, and cayenne, and hawthorn, and ginger, mustard. Some of those spices protect you from the damage that can be done by the damaged molecule, but not so much the damaged molecules as the molecules in your body that create free radicals. And they basically take sparks that might light a fire in a place where you don't want one in your cells, right? That's why you
Okay.
have a screen in front of the fireplace, right? So they're the screen in front of the fireplace in your cells. What they do is they pick up those sparks and then they feed them back into the system.
All right, let me ask you about protein
Yeah.
though. How are you getting the right amount of protein?
Well, you know that seeds and nuts
Okay.
have more protein in them than steaks?
Really? Which ones? Or is it
No,
any
well,
like
when I think
walnuts?
about what a steak is made of, first of all, it's made out of grass. So all those amino acids
Right.
you think you need from steak, they're actually made out of grass, right?
Okay.
Because that's all the cow eats. So there's apparently
Okay.
enough in there to make the steak. But the other thing is the steak is 80% water. Oh, so now you shrink it down. Okay, well, it's no more than 20% of your steak is protein. That's not a lot. But seeds and nuts are only 10 to 15 to 20% water. So you're getting protein in a more concentrated form. And that's the main source. But you get protein out of broccoli too. It's just like the cow gets protein out of grass. Sometimes I say,
Okay.
steak is just a more concentrated form of vegetable. Because a cow is
What
the cow is a concentrated form of vegetable because it's made out of grass. And so is the milk. It's made out of grass.
yeah. No, one of the things I've started doing to try to supplement my protein intake so that I don't have to eat so much animal protein is I take essential amino acids, usually 3 helpings a day.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Well, it's, what my kid's is fitness trainer. He sells proteins. It's whey protein that he worked with.
I
Um,
I consume whey
yeah.
protein as far as
But if you
something,
look
yeah.
at it in big picture, it's like you have white sugar, you have white flour, you have white oils, and you have white proteins. Because in your seeds and nuts, you get proteins with minerals, with vitamins, with fiber, with antioxidants, with anti-inflammatory molecules. And when they make these protein powders, they're kind of separating out the protein from all the other stuff that in nature would come with your proteins. So you want to be aware of that, and you need to make up for that. And there's several ways to do it. One is you can not use it. The other one is you can supplement with antioxidants, or you can supplement with spices. Some of the spices have antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial, anti-cancer, cardio, anti-diabetes, anti-lupus, antioxidant, and anti-inflammatory properties. All one spice has all of those benefits. And
Yeah.
the pharmaceutical drugs we have side effects. They give you some of those benefits, but they have side effects because they don't belong in the human body. And nature's way to deal with all of that was through the spices and herbs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't, I use some protein powders sometimes too. And I use
Okay.
supplements too. But a lot of people eat garbage, now we're talking about ultra processed foods, ton of people eating that stuff. No, you want to get the best food you can. And that's always fresh, whole, raw, organic, local, in season. It's always like that. And then you might add some mineral, vitamin, amino acid supplements on top of that to make sure that you optimize your intake. Because some of it depends
Yeah,
on what's in the soils too. So you want to, so you can play a little game of insurance with your, with your supplements.
let me ask you this. One of the things that I did about 7 years ago is I just completely abrogated alcohol from my diet. I don't drink any form of alcohol at all
Yeah.
whatsoever. What is your take on alcohol and what it does to our body?
Well, you know what? The fact that you can go in a coma on alcohol tells you that alcohol is poison. The fact that you can
Right.
get cirrhosis of the liver from alcohol tells you that alcohol is poison for your liver, right? And alcohol is also associated with more cancer, and alcohol is associated with
Yeah.
a lot of problems. What I think maybe your audience should know is that the studies that were done that made them be able to say, oh, 1 or 2 drinks is good for health. Do you know how they did the study?
Mm.
Okay, so they took 2 groups of people, 50 of them. I'm the numbers are not the numbers they use, but it's like half of these people never drank. And they took another half of the people who drank 5 to 6 drinks a day. They put them together, put them all on 1 or 2 drinks. And in total, they got an improvement of health because half the people were drinking 5 or 6 and they brought them down
Right.
to 1 or 2.
Right.
So then
Yeah.
they pulled all of that together. They did not make the distinction and they lied about what they did in the study. And so they had scientific evidence that 1 or 2 drinks are good, and that's really good for sales, right?
Of
But
course.
in fact,
Of course.
so that was outed a few years ago. And so now if you ask people who are not lying or not being paid by the alcohol industry or have some other reason for doing this, now what they're saying is alcohol is a poison. 0 alcohol is best for health.
Yeah. That's the thing. I finally came to the conclusion that there was no downside whatsoever to
To
me
quitting
not
alcohol.
drinking. Exactly.
No, there's an
Where
upside to it. It's
yeah.
better than
Yeah,
that. It's not
exactly.
just that there's no
What
downside. There's an upside to it.
100%. And then whenever I started understanding what it did to my glutathione levels, especially as you get older and just sucking antioxidants out of my body. And I think that's one of the things good about the way you frame a lot of because what I hear you saying early on in this conversation is it's managing your body at the cellular level that people don't really think about. They think about
Well,
I'm losing weight or I gain weight or whatever. But at the cellular level, when you start to think about that, that's what, at least for me, in that context, it changed how I
okay,
approached health.
let me refine it for you. If you look at physical conditions, any physical disease conditions, okay, cancer, cardio, inflammation, like any of them, every physical disease of physical origin begins at the level of interactions between molecules. Like electrons never get sick, atoms never get sick, molecules never get sick. It's in the interaction of molecules that you end up getting poor interactions because you're putting in the wrong molecules. If all the molecules are nature's molecules, because life used nature to create you, right? Or God created nature to create your body. And aligned means in line with nature for your body, right? So, um, so you always have to go to that level, and it's always at the level of interactions between molecules. So let me give you an example. So you have oils that get damaged, and you've already told me that's 60 trillion times worse than you think it is. But you get these molecules. They did not exist in nature. They were made by the processing, or sometimes made deliberately, right? And because they never existed in nature, they were never in your body. So life never had to make a program for taking them down. So now you eat them, and these are fat molecules. They go somewhere in your body where there should be a natural molecule. This is an unnatural molecule. In that space, something is supposed to go on the interaction between molecules level. And it can't go on. It gets blocked or sidetracked or interfered with. And in that space, something unnatural happens. And when you have enough molecules in your body where this unnatural thing is happening, then eventually it becomes diagnosable as a physical disease. Right? It is always
Makes
at the
sense.
level of interactions between molecules that the physical problems arise. Now, you can always think badly, and that will translate into bad eating habits, or sometimes you can create hormones that change interactions between molecules. So you can also create some of that mentally. But I'm just talking about the physical stuff. It's always physical disease always begins at the level, not begin, is all, the physical part always begins at the level of interactions between molecules. Why living aligned with nature and your nature is so important, because that's how you get all the natural molecules and none of the unnatural ones.
So if if there were like, because I think it's safe to say that you would not disagree with the terms become more popular now. Food is medicine. Would that be safe to say that we can say that food is medicine?
Yeah, I think it's a stupid way of saying it.
Okay, but
No,
just
let me
for
let me
well,
tell you why. Food
okay,
food is the construction material for body construction. Health is
okay,
the natural state, means natural molecules, right?
okay,
Medicine is for illness. If you're living in line with nature, you don't get sick. I'm 83. Do you know I have no
yeah,
aches or pains anywhere in my
yeah.
body? My knees don't hurt. When I was 38, I had arthritis in my knees. And whenever
Wow.
I just bent my knees a little, it wasn't really severe yet, but whenever I bent my knees hurt. So I had the beginning of arthritis. And there are other people in my family who have arthritis and like that.
Yeah.
Then I got poisoned. Then I straightened out my diet. Then I started getting into how do I live aligned? How do I live healthy? Now I'm 83. I'm on no drugs, and I have no problems anywhere in my body. It's like except
You know,
if I bang into something, I'll injure myself, and then it heals. But I don't have any of those things that everybody's worried about that kill like 70% of the population from degenerative conditions.
I completely agree with that. And whenever I was I'm 50 now, whenever I was 28, 29, I would get like aches in my elbows from doing pull-ups and some of the
Yeah,
exercises that I would do. And back then I still drank alcohol. I probably consumed a lot more seed oils and different things. Now that I'm really dialed in with nutrition, no
yeah,
alcohol, same thing, no aches, no pains, no back pain, no joint
yeah,
pain. And I'm more active now than I've always been very
yeah.
active, but I'm probably more active. Like I'll whenever you and I finish, I'm going to go do my second workout of the
Yeah.
day, and it will not, it'll be fine. It truly is remarkable how once you start to focus on what you put into your body
Yeah.
and the difference it makes. With that said, what are I don't care if it's 2 things, 3 things, 5 things. What are some things that you're gonna consume every single day to make sure that those molecules are reacting to one another correctly in a way that's gonna maintain health? What are some things you're always going to have on your as far as your consumption on a daily basis?
Always seeds and nuts. I love
Okay,
love broccoli. Always
okay,
always garlic. Always the spices. And then in terms of exercise, since you mentioned it, I do
uh,
enough to keep body and soul together. I'm not a jock. And I have a chin-up bar and I have a mini trampoline and I go for walks and sometimes I have a little slope that outside my house. I just run like hell up the slope. It's a very short,
yeah,
just a burst of speed.
yeah,
And so I'm
yep.
active. Uh, and I say that because moderation in exercise is also useful because a lot of people overdo it and wreck themselves but wreck
Yep.
themselves by being out of line with how it would be in nature. You might have a burst of speed to get away
100%.
from the bear, or the leopard or whoever, but you wouldn't be always just like, huffing and puffing, right? And I
I
and
could not agree
and
more.
I would say in North America, in Europe, in Western society, I think rest is actually more important than activity because it's so neglected. And so,
Yep.
of all the things to do, even before the nutrition and all of that, the thing to do to spend an hour every day going inside into the stillness and discovering the peace that is your universal essence, and the unconditional empowering love that is your individual essence, and getting that in place, because then you feel so cared for, you will make the other choices for long life and health simply because you love being alive. If you hate being alive, then you will say, "Oh, fuck, you care." Sorry.
That's
Yeah,
you're
they say,
good.
"Oh, they
Yeah.
say everything's too much work." Oh, and then you eat the
Right.
garbage, and then you make it convenient, and it's really based on you being depressed and kind of like subconsciously saying, "Oh, I'm out of here. I'm not going to."
Well,
And
tell me what your practice looks like. Is it prayer? Is it meditation? Is it
no,
breath work? Like, does it happen in the morning? Does it throughout the day? What does it look like whenever you have that moment
if
to?
if you could do it 24 hours a day, that would be the best. But what I do is I have a joke about it. I say, okay, when I get up, I want to check in to see if I'm still there, because if I'm not there anymore, no point getting up. Right. So that's my joke, right? But when I wake up, at night, your mind roams, whatever it goes, and you have your dreams and you come out in a good mood, a bad mood. I had some not so good mood stuff happened last night in a dream, right? Was I good? It's a good learning dream, but didn't put me in a good mood. So the first thing I do before I get out of bed, I lie on my back, put my head behind my head, because then I don't fall asleep, right? And then I do my practice. And the point of the practice is to bring your focus from your mind, where it's thinking, thinking, thinking. That's where we spend most of our time, or out there. That's where we spend most of our time. To bring the focus inside into the kingdom of heaven that I was told is within me. And then just looking around, listening, like looking inward, listening inward, feeling inward. What's there? Because that's where the love is. That's where the power is. That's where the light is. That's where the soundness is. And in that, that's the energy that is perfect health. So I get out of bed perfectly healthy because I actually connected. Now, if life is perfect health, and you get out of the way of
Yeah.
life doing its job in the body, because it runs everything, right? It weighs nothing and runs everything, right?
Mhm.
Unconditional, empowering love, 24/7, lifelong, right? So if you get out of the way of that energy flowing through the body without obstruction, and some of those obstructions are created by your mind when you say, "Why am I effed up?" Or "What's wrong with me?" Or "Oh, I hate that person." Oh, all the negative things we say to ourselves. Well, they get in the way of this perfect energy called unconditional empowering love doing its job. And that's how mindset makes you say. So when you go in and in the West, when we do psychology, we move the mindset pieces around. That's what
Mhm.
we do. You're thinking this, well, think that. In the East, they say, no, no, no. Mind is the problem. You need to transcend mind. You need to step out of it. You need to step into something beyond the mind that is not affected by the mind, that has no thoughts in it, that has no emotions in it, but has something in it, and find out what that is. Right? And
Yeah.
so it's not a prayer. Prayer's in words. So that can be helpful because, like a mantra, if you're agitated and you say, two, 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 whatever, I just made up a mantra, right? Two, 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 two.
Right.
Well, then that'll get you a little calmer. But if you really want to go into the peace that is the universal essence of your existence and the existence of everything in the universe, if you want to get into that peace, you have to get out of the word realm, out of the emotional realm, out of the physical realm, and even beyond the energy realm, because the energy comes out of peace. And when you're in that realm, that's beyond life and death. It's unconditional. It's infinite. It's all-encompassing. And when you can connect to that peace in the core of your being, you recognize, actually, that that peace is not limited to your body. That peace goes from its center in you, and you're a center for it. I'm a center for it. Every point in space is a center for it. It goes from the center all the way out to infinity, and you feel it. It's not limited to your body. And then you look around and you say, oh my God, peace. You know, peace, there is more peace in this universe than anything else. And in peace, galaxies explode. And in peace, we create wars. And in peace, we do stupid ideas that lead to stupid words, that lead to stupid action. Or you live in awe and inspiration and gratitude to the peace and the unconditional love that we are in our own nature. We're wired for a world in harmony. Okay, so going back to the practice, before I get out of bed, that's how I want to start my day. And then during the day, I want to stay in that place and drag that into the world with me. Because when I'm in peace, you know, I see peace everywhere. I will act into the world or respond to things in the world from a place of peace to bring it into peace if necessary, right? But if I'm angry, I will see enemies, right? And if I'm fearful, I'll see danger. So my state of being automatically colors my perception, which then colors my interpretations of things, which then colors my reactions to these things. So you want to build a world of peace and love, and where people are in harmony and they help each other. Physician, heal thyself. That's where it starts.
I love it. I love it. So what's keeping you busy on a day-to-day basis now? I mean, you've got this wealth of knowledge. You've done all this pioneering work. I mean, what are you doing right now? What is your primary? Do you set goals, or what does it look like right now?
Yeah, I'm not structured the way most people are structured. I run on obsession, and if I'm not obsessed with it, it's going to get done. It's not about money. It's not about, my goals. It's like, I'm going to end up in a box. My body's going to end up in a box somewhere, right? Or a little urn or whatever, right? There's nothing on this planet that I'm going to take with me. And, that's what they say. What do they say? Don't set up for, set up for riches in the place that moth and dust won't corrupt, right?
That's right.
Okay, well, 83, I know I'm going to check out one day. What do I want to do in the time? Honestly, I would love if 8 billion people could find that unbelievable, awesome magnificence that is their gift from the universe as life in peace. I would like for 8 billion people to know that that's true, because that's the first step, that that that's already in them. And then second, to give that priority so that they become that example that is my model, because, Christ is inside of every human being as part of their nature, whether they believe in him or not, whether they've read about him or heard about him, because Christ is a word about a reality, and that reality is global. That's why I say, some people call it Christ, some people call it Buddha. The messages were not that different. Buddha said, all your suffering comes from attachment. Yeah, because you attach yourself to things that change, and then you don't want them to change. Well, that's part of the same picture, right? And then, but you need to embody that. If 8 billion people embodied that peace and that love that the masters talked about, And all the masters said we could. None of them ever said that what they did was impossible for us. The institution
Yeah.
came up with that as a means to control people. And so you basically have to graduate from the institutions and their ideologies and live in the reality of your own existence, because that's where
Yeah.
all the good stuff is.
You know,
So
and
8 billion people.
I'm with,
So I want to do something with Elon, to put that message out
yeah,
globally, because
yeah,
2,000 years ago, he rode a donkey or walked in a small area. And right now, we
yeah.
got the world wired for a message like that. Can you imagine how cool that would be?
Oh, I know.
8 billion people hear it all in the same day. Whoa.
Yeah. It's,
And, and then
it's funny.
and then I want to work with people, you can fight the pesticides, and you can fight the drugs, and you can fight the vaccinations, and you can fight all the things that are wrong and that are bad and that have bad intent and that are about money instead of being about life. You can fight that, but at some point, you actually have to build the alternative. And so you got to be careful as a warrior that you don't end up winning a revolution and then not having an idea what you wanted to build instead. And the tendency is the warriors don't build that. Mao won a revolution. He was an awful leader of a country
Yep.
because he never
Yep.
thought about it. He knew what he hated, but he didn't know what he loved.
That's where I think, and I'm with you. I wish so badly, first of all, I wish so badly people did realize how much agency over their own lives that they
Oh my
had, and that they would take advantage. Wouldn't that be nice? Instead of looking at all these
Yep.
external forces and putting so much power in things they cannot control, that could to let them control their lives. I'm with you. If we could get to that point, and then another thing, you just nailed it. So much that we see in the West right now is all about tearing down. And if you ask the people that want to tear it all down, okay, what are you going to build in its place? They wouldn't have a clue.
No,
And if they even
when it finally falls down, the first thing that
Mhm.
everybody's going to say is, "Oh shit."
Yeah, yeah. What now? What now? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
so I tend to be less of a warrior in that regard. I'm pretty clear.
Yeah.
I tend to be less of a warrior. I'm more interested in, wow, we've never built a teachable field of health based in nature and human being. Let me think about it. How do we put that together? What does it entail? So I'm working on that. And then the other one about human nature. What is a human being? We get taught to be good slaves, good workers, good
Yep.
citizens, good followers of ideologies. Well, what we ought to be taught is how to live and how to master what the masters mastered, because they
Yeah.
all said that was an option for us. And
Yeah.
I was born in a war, so the war was kind of put me on notice and said, well, you know what? Maybe you need to aim a little higher. Why not aim? Why not? One day, we do survival stuff, right? And that's good, but I say survival is a worthwhile but losing proposition. Why? One day
Yeah.
your body's going to check out. It doesn't matter what you do. And I know people tell you that with stem cells and this and that, you can live forever. No, you can't. Anything that has form will lose form. That's the problem
Yeah.
with form, right?
Yeah.
So if if it's a losing proposition, then don't put all your eggs in there. Then say, okay, well, what would I need to do to thrive? What kind of vision is worth pursuing? What kind of a carrot do I want to chase? I don't want to just keep running from sticks. Even when you talk preventive medicine, they say, well, how do you prevent cardiovascular disease? How do you prevent cancer? Well, you're still talking about cancer and cardio instead of saying, how do we embody health? Because that's actually where we want to go, right? How do we embody health?
100%.
Well, how do you embody health? Well, the first thing is you've got to know that it's possible. The second thing is you've got to know what it is. And then the third is you got to do what it takes to live in line with what it is and how it works.
Yep. Amen. Amen. I love it. I love it. Well, this has been an absolute blast. Just listening to you rip. It has been so good for my soul.
If you want to do some more on the big picture, Well, let's do
Yeah.
another one.
I would be more than happy. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to do that. I will absolutely
Okay.
take you up on that. In the meantime, how do people stay in touch with you, follow your work and what you're up to, and continue beyond this podcast and our next one to be inspired by you?
You know, that's the wrong question.
Tell me the correct one.
How do
You,
okay.
you've gained my trust with your wisdom. So teach me,
Well,
brother.
no, so the right question is, how do I get in touch with myself? You
Okay.
get it? Right? It's like, okay,
Yep.
so now I'm going to be your leader. So now you're turning me into Moses. You know, I don't want to be your leader. I want
Yeah.
you to become your own leader. Life is already leading you. Christ is already leading you. Buddha is already leading you. Krishna is already leading you. Whatever that thing is that you call, it's inside of you already, leading your life already. You want a leader? You want a good leader, a world leader? How about life? It's that same leader is already in 8 billion people running the show. How about going there and asking your leader for the advice that you need instead of chasing me around, you know, and then saying, oh shit, he died today. Oh, now what do I do? No, yeah, because the leader inside
Right.
of you is still alive. So, and I say it as a joke, but it's an important issue. You know,
It's so important. I wish more people would
yeah, yeah.
understand that.
So
I wish more people would understand
now
that,
that
Udo. So I'm with
now
you.
that I've said that, I'll tell you how to get a hold of me. I
Deal.
have a YouTube channel under Udo Erasmus, and I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn. And if you go on Google, my name is crazy enough. It was a problem when I was a kid. I wanted to be like everybody else, but now it's like, oh my God, I have the perfect SEO, right? Search
Right.
engine optimization. You write Udo Erasmus, I'm on the first page. And then if
Terrific.
you go and you say Udo Erasmus / podcast, there's a few podcasts that I've done. I have some podcasts on my website, udoerasmus.com. So I'm not hard to find. I think I'm easier to find than you finding yourself. And make
Isn't that the
yeah,
truth?
and so where the energy most needs to go is for you finding yourself, because we're used to going out in our senses. We need to go in with our senses. Next time we're on, I want to talk about how we got disconnected and how to get reconnected. Has something to do with the birth story and yeah, it'll be cool. It was very cool.
I, I'm
Okay.
down. I'm down. We'll schedule. Udo, this has been a lot of fun, brother. Thank you so much. I really
All right.
appreciate your
Thank
time.
you. And I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
giving me the airtime, and you're doing a cool thing for people. If this is a good message, you're doing a hell of a good deal, because otherwise I'd be talking to myself in the bathroom mirror.
I appreciate it. All
Okay.
right. So folks, stand by for part 2, because there will be a part 2. Thanks so much for listening.
All right. Thank you.